Hello and happy Thanksgiving from everyone here at Rising. Brianna and I will be back to bring you the latest news next week. In the meantime, enjoy this flashback from earlier this year. In the latest Emerson College polling, 4% of registered voters said they'd cast their ballots for Green Party candidate Dr. Cornel West in the 2024 presidential contest. Here with us now is Dr. West himself. Welcome to Rising.
Oh, it's always a blessing to be here with both of you all. And I apologize, I misplaced my glasses, but I hope I have insights that I don't need my glasses for.
Well, we are happy to have you join us in any condition. Thank you so much for being here. First off, right off the top, want to get your reaction to something Senator Bernie Sanders said about your candidacy. We're going to play this clip from him and then have you react.
Let me ask you about Cornel West. He was a co-chair of your campaign in 2020. He's flirting with a Green Party bid for president. The numbers tell the story between 2016 and 2020. You can directly correlate the two third-party candidates, their collective total. That was the difference between Biden winning states and Clinton losing those key states. Are you trying to discourage Cornel West from running?
Well, I've known Cornel for many, many years. He's a very independent-minded guy. He will do what he wants to do. I just think, again, I think Cornel or anybody else can play an important role now about raising issues that are not always discussed. But at the end of the day, I think the progressive community in general and the American people have got to make a decision as to whether we stand for democracy or authoritarianism, or whether or not we're going to represent working class families.
What's your reaction to what Senator Sanders says there?
Oh, no, I think that Brother Bernie's being consistent. You know, he said that all along, and I can understand the argument. I think it's a plausible argument. I just don't think it's a persuasive one. I think that the argument he's making means that there's never any possibility for breaking from the corporate duopoly. There's never any possibility of trying to speak to the needs of poor and working people. I'm fresh from Mississippi, as you all probably know, there in Rankin County with Brother Jenkins and Brother Parker. I was there, the precious mother of Jenkins, Mary, and those lawyers down there, Brother Malik and Brother Trent. They're dealing with issues that the Democratic Party won't touch, which is issues of poverty and intense police brutality. And we haven't even got to the military adventurism abroad. So I think in many ways, Brother Bernie's making a plausible argument, but I think deep down in his heart, he knows that the Democratic Party has no fundamental intention of speaking to the needs of poor people and working people. They are dominated by their corporate wing. They're dominated by the militarists when it comes to foreign policy, and that he and AOC and the others are going to be, in a certain sense, window dressing at worst, and at best, people to appeal to every 4 years. But the Democratic Party is beyond redemption at this point when it comes to seriously speaking to the needs of poor and working people.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I do think that there's this argument that's very persuasive to a lot of voters that says, well, yeah, I don't think the Democratic Party is going to do anything more than maintain the status quo. I completely agree with the critique that it's a corporate party. It's why I potentially supported Bernie Sanders in 2016 and or 2020. But Donald Trump does present an existential threat, and therefore I'm going to bend the knee at the end of the day and vote to prevent him from getting a second term of office. And Dr. West, this was a position that you took ultimately in 2020, going ahead and voting for Joe Biden. So can you help us understand why it is that you feel differently now, and you know how things have changed if they have?
Well, I think we've reached such a low point in the nadir that either we go for broke and try, in fact, to reshape most of the political system. It'd be nice to have rank priority voting and proportional representation. That would be a positive thing. Democratic Party has no interest in that whatsoever. It's clear that Biden and company have no serious interest in trying to scale back on the militarism abroad. They have no serious interest in trying to really make poor and working people a priority. So that Bernie's argument, and again, I love my brother no matter what, but Bernie's argument is there's never time to break. And part of the paradox here, my sister, is the neo-fascism that's escalating is predicated on the rottenness of a system in which the Democratic Party facilitates that frustration and desperation because it can't present an alternative. And if America is unable to present an alternative to the Democratic parties in the end, then we're going fascist.
Yeah.
We just need to acknowledge that because we're going to go sooner or later, it's going to go back and forth. So we've got to have some kind of break, or at least raise our voices and tell our precious citizens the truth about our condition. The 63% of our brothers and sisters of all colors who are citizens who are living paycheck to paycheck as the beginning. Now, Brother Bernie understands that. Don't get me wrong. He's on my side in that sense. But at this particular historical moment, he's on the side of the Democratic establishment rather than the critics of that establishment trying to generate an alternative.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that some people are also wondering, whether or not your candidacy is the type that is endeavoring to bring certain issues to the foreground, as Bernie characterized it, saying that, yes, it was important to be talking about progressive issues, those kinds of things, but that you might ultimately not be willing to take this through to the end because of concerns about spoilers. In fact, progressive editor-in-chief at Current Affairs magazine, Nathan J. Robinson, recently suggested, quote, if I were Biden, I would be inviting Cornel West to the White House and asking him to submit a list of policies he would take in exchange for dropping out. Again, framing this as purely a leverage opportunity as opposed to a sincere effort to take this to the finish line. Journalist Glenn Greenwald responded to Nathan Robinson's suggestion, saying, sorry, but Cornel West is way too smart, sophisticated, and experienced to be bought off by some craven White House pageantry and empty gestures and promises made by a Democratic Party that is enslaved to its donor base and neocon doctrine of endless war. He's not Bernie or AOC. What do you say to that? Which one of these men is right? Should people be concerned that they don't want to get behind you because ultimately they think that this is a symbolic campaign and you're not willing to actually go through the general election?
No, I think Glenn is right. I think the first option we've seen with Brother Bernie at the highest level, I mean, Bernie remains a historic figure in terms of at the presidential historical level, being able to galvanize a serious progressive following. It's just that in the end, I was on the platform committee. We brought all the pressure and power we could to the Democratic Party to no avail. It was symbolic and it was over. And once they moved into power, we were taken back to the caboose on the Democratic Party train. And I think that's just, that's the way the Democratic Party is. It's so tied to Wall Street and war that in the end, it's not going to seriously speak to the people I'm concerned about, which are the poor and working people here and poor and working people abroad.
What can we do to get more, competition in our political system? The two-party duopoly is so powerful and forces a lot of people on the Democratic side, people like Bernie Sanders in the squad, to fall in line because there's there's perceived to be no viable alternative. And obviously the electoral system, everything about the system creates and rewards and reinforces the two parties. What can we do to make third parties stronger and more viable? And is that part of your candidacy, is making a pitch for systemic for reform to the system to strengthen the possibility of third parties in every direction?
Absolutely. And I agree with that in regard to the Libertarian Party and a whole host of other parties, namely that we've got to have ranked choice voting, we need proportional representation, and we need to abolish the Electoral College. And even if we did those, we still need campaign reform. As long as that big money is poisoning our political system, increasing the corruption, making it difficult for high-quality candidates to emerge. Isn't it interesting? Look at all the magnificent, intelligent, imaginative fellow citizens, and we end up with these milquetoast, mediocre politicians of both parties. There's a hemorrhaging taking place, a major hemorrhaging taking place, and most Americans understand that. And as my brother puts it, Cliff, he told me the other day, he said, Corn, he said, I think you're the best candidate. I support the best candidate, and they view you as ending up supporting the worst candidate? Is that the best that America has to offer? And I said, well, Cliff, let me think and pray on that, brother. That's a powerful point. That's a powerful point. So you have to end up supporting a mediocre milquetoast Biden? Please.
Are you confident that Biden's going to end up being the nominee? I was reflecting on 2020 and remembering that Bloomberg didn't get into the race until November of 2019, many months out, and he was perceived by some to be a last-ditch alternative to Bernie-style candidate who was able to self-fund. Obviously, he's one of the richest men in the world, who could be a stopgap measure if Biden didn't take off, if Bernie seemed to be really poised to take it, to make sure that there was still a corporatist heading the Democratic Party. Are you confident, given recent polls showing that Joe Biden is going to lose to Trump, regardless of whether or not you're in the race, but especially if you're in the race, that there will be an effort to replace him as the Democratic nominee?
Yes, I was there with Brother Bernie in Nevada when it was clear that we were on the way to victory. Obama makes the call, all the other neoliberals drop out because they wanted anybody but Bernie, and some of them wanted Trump over Bernie. So it's clear that they want a neoliberal rule, which is to say they want this class war to continue against poor and working people in the name of diversity and equity, or whatever language they come up with. And so it's true that Biden might not be able to make it, and they'll try to bring somebody else in. And for all we know, Trump may not be the candidate. He may be on the way to jail. It's hard to say. We live in real time, and it's hard to know what's going on in this election. No label, what a title, no label. How are you going to be a party with no label? What you stand for, please? But that's just a footnote. But the no label, brothers and sisters, they may make their move too. We shall see. But the important thing is, poor and working people must have not just a voice, but they must be galvanized in a movement. This campaign is a moment in a movement to try to create conditions under which the corporate priorities and the imperial policies abroad are radically called into question, so we can have the empowerment of those /stone called everyday people. That's precisely what this campaign is about.
You've mentioned calling into question, yes, the foreign policies of the current administration. I know you've spoken out against the Ukraine war and our funding, our military funding, the weapons we're sending. On the Republican side, obviously, we had this debate last week where most of the candidates supported what the Biden administration is doing in Ukraine. Vivek Ramaswamy did not. Ron DeSantis was somewhat did not. Their views, in keeping with what a lot of libertarian and leftist anti-interventionists want on that specific question, and also what Republican primary voters say they want. You survey Republican voters, 70% of them said we have sent enough weapons to Ukraine. This is not making things better. What do you make of the transformation that's taken place, where the Democratic Party establishment, the administration, is wholeheartedly supporting this intervention there, and so many people in both parties, but so many active Republican primary voters speaking out against that?
Maybe that's part of the bipartisanship and the agreement of both parties that I'm calling into question. And even when you have Republicans who are critical of foreign policy in Ukraine, they still want America to be the empire, and they want all other nations to defer to America. I don't want America to be an empire. I'm an anti-imperialist. I want America to be a decent, dignified nation among nations. So my critique of what's going on in Ukraine is not just an agreement about a war, but it's about the role of the United States in trying to shape the whole globe in its image, and using NATO as one instrument among a whole host of other instruments. Now, I am also in solidarity with my Ukrainian brothers and sisters. I don't want people to ever think that I downplay that suffering. Not at all. That's why I want to bring the war to a close. That's why I want a fair diplomatic process, and so forth. But at the same time, this is a critique of the American empire. This is not just a critique of isolated war. Democrats have been the party of war. That's why Martin Luther King Jr. broke with LBJ. Look what LBJ was doing for poor people. It was a marvelous movement, war against poverty. But Martin King said no. And in the end, those bombs dropped in Vietnam are going to land on ghettos and barrios and reservations and poor white communities. Brother Martin was right. We know that 60 years ago, yesterday, when he was talking about we need a fundamental change in our priorities. He's absolutely right. That's my tradition. That's Fannie Lou Hamer when I was down in Rankin County this weekend with Malik and Trent and Brother Kareem and Brother Coach Campbell and others, to see the humanity and the dignity of these poor folk still undergoing unbelievable police brutality, unbelievable poverty, and yet fighting back. See, that's the best of America. That's Rabbi Heschel. That's Edward Said. That's Dorothy Day. That's the best of America. We have a tradition in our own country that connects with indigenous people and women and gays and lesbians and precious trans and black folk and brown folk, not in a narrow neoliberal identity politics, but in a profound human sensitivity to the suffering of the least of these, the most vulnerable, those who are pushed to the margin. That's seems to me, that's what it is, to try to be a decent person with integrity before the worms get your body.
Yeah, if I could just, as I'm reflecting on what I think makes you compelling to certain people in a political context and beyond, it is, I think, your constant kind of centering your views, your beliefs on this idea that there is a strength in the shared needs and values of poor and working class people, regardless of race, color, creed, and all of those kinds of things. And you talk in a way that's very sympathetic and frankly loving to even your political adversaries, in a way that I think really models what a lot of politicians say they care about, as they say we need to be less divisive, we need to find a sense. I think Vivek recently said we need a sense of national identity to bind ourselves together because we're so racially diverse and things like that. And I wonder what you make of the kind of gap, it seems, between certain rhetoric that says we don't like to be divisive, but which will characterize, let's say, a disagreement with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley about how to talk about diversity, as describing her as akin to the Ku Klux Klan, the members of the Ku Klux Klan, especially coming out of your recent trip to Mississippi. I don't know if you had any thoughts or feelings about the nature of racial rhetoric in this country post Jacksonville shooting, and in the light of some of the rhetoric that we saw out of the GOP debate last week.
Yeah, one might be assistant. I appreciate that question. But our discussion about race is just so impoverished, and it's just so shallow, and it's so empty that if we can't begin with the precious humanity of all of us, no matter what color or gender or orientation, and then keep track of the very ugly and vicious structures of white supremacy, and the structures of male supremacy, and structures of homophobia, and structures of anti-Jewish hatred, and anti-Muslim hatred, and anti-Arab hatred, and so forth, then we're going to end up just moving ponds and making these crazy, this asinine, obscene analogy between the Klan killing folk, lynching folk. Look at Emmett Till. I was there with his family. That is barbarism at its highest level. And then the response of black people is, Emmett Till's mama, I don't have a minute to hate. I will pursue justice for the rest of my life. That's a spiritual and moral achievement that I'm not going to create a black version of the Ku Klux Klan. That's the level of humanity and morality, and I would even say spirituality, that we need. And it comes in a number of different ways. There's secular forms of that, Muslim forms, and Malcolm X says, I'm for truth, no matter who's for it. I'm for justice, no matter who promotes it. I'm a human being. I'm a black man. I'm a Muslim. It comes in Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer. There's a number of different traditions that keep that human connection. And that's what we're losing. That's what we're losing. And we lose a human connection in the end. What is it for anyway? That's why I use the musicians all the time. You see my John Coltrane here. You see that Bill Evans on the piano with Miles Davis's quintet. He's not a white ally and involved in identity, connection with black folk. He's in the band. And if you got folk in the band, they're in the band to struggle for truth and justice, no matter what color they are. Black Clarence was in Bruce Springsteen's band. He wasn't a black ally in the band. He was in the band. A Greg playing drums and Sly Stone. They in the band. Being in the band is being on the love train, being part of the justice train, being concerned consistently, but acknowledging we're always going to disagree. That's why I can disagree with Brother Bernie and still have him as my brother, but we're on different sides at this particular election. Same would be true with anybody else, feminists, black nationalists, we can go Marxists and so forth. If we overlap in the foxhole, and that's the crucial point. You see, when you get in that foxhole, you just don't want ideological correctness. You want folk who really care for the people. You don't want folk just talking about justice in the abstract. Any justice that's only justice soon degenerates into something less than justice. You got to care for the people. You got to love the people. And some of us are willing to live and die for the people with a smile on our face. Because what the people have done for us is beyond language. It's beyond words. And that begins with Mom and Dad and Shiloh Baptist Church and the Black Panther Party and a whole host of activists who have shaped my life.
Dr. West, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we hope to have you back again soon.
But I always salute you all. You all doing a wonderful job. I tell you that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Have a
Dr.
good
West.
We'll see whether I catch up with my glasses. You know what I mean?
Well, we wish you luck on that for certain.
Absolutely.